Welcome to The Shift Show with Adriana Bucci. Join me every week to learn all about narcissistic abuse recovery, healing from physical and emotional pain after the abuse, and everything else to do with toxic people and how they affect your physical, emotional, and mental health. And no, you are not the crazy one. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Let's get right to it. Hey, and welcome back to the Dear Adriana column right here on The Shift Show. Our second and not last, absolutely not last, question for the column comes from Lisa. And Lisa asks, my husband and I have been married for 18 years and we have 3 kids, girls who are 17, 16, and a son who is 12. My father-in-law, who along with my mother-in-law lives 15 minutes away, has been insulting, verbally digging into the kids for the past 5 to 10 years. We have been supervising him closely, but any chance he gets, he digs into one of my daughters and my son. The other daughter is the golden child. We learned on June of 2023 that he has been calling them names, for example, calling my daughter a bitch and calling my son an asshole. My husband talked with his parents. They deny everything. Of course they do. Even though all 3 of my kids confirm it, and he erupted in rage. That was when we realized he has NPD, which stands for Narcissistic Personality Disorder. We have been no contact since that day. However, my husband's family, a sister and an uncle, aunt have interviewed and are constantly after my husband to forgive them, saying they're old and they won't be around much longer, etc. Both live out of state and have threatened to get in the car and come down here. Jeez. I don't think my husband wants to alienate his entire family, but I am over them all and want to be left alone. Thoughts, recommendations? Well, I have a lot of thoughts and recommendations for this. So your father-in-law is totally a narcissist. Like, the fact that he's going after your kids is awful. And the aunt and the uncle there are totally flying monkeys and enablers. So who are the flying monkeys and enablers? These are the people who justify, excuse, and, are pushing you to forgive and all that kind of stuff. And it sounds like they're flying monkeys. So flying monkeys are the people who the narcissist kind of outsources to do their dirty work for him. So they're basically threatening you, saying they're going to come down there, even though they live out of state, and do what? You know what I mean? Like, it's so ridiculous. And them saying that, they're old, they won't be around much longer. Like, yeah, we all know how time works, people. Everyone is mortal. And they're really just trying to sort of guilt trip you into keeping those lines of communication open. So there's quite a few things that I want to unpack here. So your husband talking with his parents is pretty much a useless exercise, and I'm not surprised that your father-in-law erupted in a rage, even though, your husband probably brought the facts and said that, all of the kids are confirming that he called your daughter a bitch and your son an asshole. And the fact that he erupted in rage. So this is really the shame rage cycle with narcissists. It's very common. It's, pretty much universal. If you trigger their shame, they will erupt into a rage. So basically, a normal person who feels shame about the way that they behaved, they're going to reflect on that shame and decide that, they're not going to behave in this way anymore. But a narcissist does not self-reflect. They just get pissed off whenever you trigger their shame. So he obviously knows that what he's doing is wrong. It's not okay to call children these names. It's ridiculous. And, it's abuse. It's abuse at the end of the day. He knows that damn well. But the thing with narcissists, they're not going to admit that, right? So instead of reflecting on their behavior and making a choice to change their behavior and not be abusive and a piece of shit anymore, is to just erupt in a rage. And the fact that confirmed to both of you that he's a narcissist is, pretty solid there. And I'm really glad that you guys have decided to go no contact since that day. So congratulations on that. So that's perfect. You are both doing the right thing for your children, protecting them from the abuse of their grandparents, in particular the father-in-law. And I'm sure the mother-in-law is probably enabling it, or at least not doing anything to protect her grandchildren from being abused by her husband, which enablers are honestly just as toxic as the narcissist, because they just sit there and they don't do anything about it, and they excuse and justify the behavior. They don't protect children in this case from the abuse that is being, perpetuated onto them. And so your husband's family, the sister and the aunt in particular, who have intervened and are always after your husband to forgive them and all that kind of stuff, they too are enablers, and they're literally justifying the abuse by saying that they're old. Being old does not justify abuse, and this is the thing with narcissistic parents. They do not get better with age. They get worse with age, and a lot of the times they use their aging to their advantage to garner sympathy and play the "I'm getting old" card in order to continue being able to abuse whoever they are abusing. And, they're trying to guilt you. People who are in a state of guilt are easier to control. So when they're saying, oh, they're not going to be around much longer, they're getting old, that's them trying to put you on a guilt trip right there. And so, and then they're threatening you that they're going to come down there. So they're trying to induce a state of fear within your husband and yourself in order to enable your in-laws to continue being abusive towards your children and yourselves too. And so it's really going to come down to sort of having a conversation with your husband. It sounds like he's reasonable. It sounds like he really understands that his father is a narcissist. The fact that he was on board with going no contact is always a great sign. And it's not really that he's going to be alienating his entire family. It's more so that he is protecting his chosen family, the family he created with you, including your children. It's on him to really protect all of you from the extended family's abuse. So try not to look at it. I mean, this is really for him. Try not to look at it like you're alienating them. They are on board with the abuser. They are cheerleading the abuser, and something is wrong with that picture. So it's really going to be about you having boundaries with your husband, Lisa, at this point. And, just kind of... It really depends what kind of relationship you have with these people. So if they're already living in a different state, that's great, because at least they're not super close to you. But the fact that they're trying to get to you both and hounding you to forgive them and all that kind of nonsense, that just shows you kind of how toxic these people are. Okay, so when you've got enablers who are like this, I do have a theory that has been proven time and time again with many of the clients that I've worked with and my own personal experiences with enablers. They're probably narcissists as well. It's just that you are not their main targets. So instead of outright abusing your husband and yourself, they're just enabling the abuse, because they probably have other targets that they're abusing on a larger scale, in a more kind of obvious way. Whether or not those people know they're being abused is another story. But they're kind of perpetuating that onto you. So people who are okay with these dynamics, people who justify these dynamics, people who threaten you that they're going to come down there if you don't make peace and forgive everybody and let these poor old people keep abusing you and your children and causing harm to them, something's wrong, right? The fact that they're okay with that means that there's something wrong with that picture, something's wrong with the way they think, and they're probably narcissists themselves. So really, the way to be left alone by these people, and I mean, your husband's really going to have to get on board with this. So I don't really know his full perspective, but just the fact that he has already been okay with the no contact with his own parents is already great, is that you're going to have boundaries with him. So you're not going to be involved in these conversations when his aunt and uncle call and start threatening you guys and all that kind of stuff. You have to really lead by example in this sort of situation where, you're not going to cater to them. You're not going to give them supply. Supply is your emotional reaction, your energy, your time engaging in these circular conversations. Because the thing is, even though you're not directly giving your in-laws supply by having these conversations with the aunt and the uncle, they're still going to be getting secondhand supply from you when the aunt and the uncle report back to your in-laws about what transpired during that conversation, because obviously it sounds like they're coming after you on behalf of your in-laws in order to enable your in-laws from continuing to perpetuate that kind of abuse. So your goal is really to not give them supply. So don't take their calls. Don't respond to their messages, their emails, however it is that they're contacting you. If they show up and they actually do come down there, that's like a legal thing. Depending where you live, you could be very well in your rights to have a restraining order against these people, because that's pretty fucked up if they actually go ahead and do that. So, I mean, it really is going to start with having just a heart-to-heart conversation with your husband, maybe having him listen to this podcast episode. Maybe that will help. And understanding that, having him understand that it's both of your jobs to protect your children. And these people, the aunt and the uncle, are not invested in protecting your children. And that's a problem. That is a big fucking problem. So hopefully this will help him to recognize that this is a huge problem, and that he can also stop giving them supply as well, right? So not responding to their requests to forgive, not responding to their nonsense about they're old and not going to be around much longer, etc., etc. The reason they're intervening is because there is something wrong. Because imagine if you were in that situation and, like, hypothetically, your sister comes to you and says, like, oh, can you call my in-laws and say, like, you're gonna go down there and threaten them if they don't forgive this person who's being abusive. You would be like, fuck off, like, you'd be like, what the hell? Like, what is wrong with you? Why are you even asking me to do this? I'm not gonna get involved in this kind of shit. So people who do get involved in that kind of shit, something is wrong. So the only way to be left alone is to kind of go no contact with them, whether that's just you right now and your husband joins in eventually after realizing that this is just not going to be, these conversations are not going to go anywhere. It's really just more manipulation tactics being thrown your way by a third party for the narcissistic in-laws. So gray rock method. Step 1, right? 1-word answers, no emotion in your voice, ending the conversation very quickly, all that kind of great stuff. And then, of course, after gray rocking, if it's only gray rocking that is within the comfort level at this time, eventually that can turn into low contact, and that can turn into eventually no contact. I would totally recommend no contact with this aunt and uncle. But again, it's really going to have to be something that your husband realizes on his own, and just really recognizing that these people are being abusive by proxy, even though they are not directly calling your children names. They are supporting the people who are calling your children names and abusing them and all that stuff. So it's really about your husband shifting his perspective and recognizing that it's not that he's alienating his family. It's that he is protecting his family from abusive people. And that's really all there is to it. If someone is toxic, family or not, they have to go at the end of the day. And the fact that he was willing to be no contact with his own parents is great, and just kind of extending that to any other family members who enable or justify or excuse or threaten this type of abuse is something that should really be put into consideration. So to protect yourself at this point, you can absolutely just be no contact with this aunt and uncle. If your husband will eventually get fed up with this aunt and uncle as well, and hopefully come to that conclusion that it's just not worth keeping this connection with these people because they're just invested in the abuse continuing for your children, which is not okay. So I hope that helps. I hope that perspective and my thoughts and recommendations are useful for both of you. And, really anybody who's listening to this, who's in a similar situation. Toxic is toxic, regardless on who the family member is. If they're getting involved, if they're enabling the abuse, if they are supporting the abusers, something is definitely wrong. And that's a connection that is worth considering not having anymore, because it's not going to go anywhere. And the main narcissists, right, the in-laws, are going to keep getting supply that way, but as a secondhand source. All right. So that's my spiel for this. I hope this has been helpful. And if you have a question that you would like to submit, you can absolutely do so by following the link in the description of this podcast episode, and feel free to submit your question. So I will just leave that link there for you, as well as my other links. I also have a new quiz that I've created on how to uncover your next steps to finding freedom after narcissistic abuse. If you're feeling stuck on how to start or continue your healing journey, your quiz results will definitely have some next steps for you, some actionable tools, all for free, and as well as some other recommendations based on your results. So that will all be there in the description. So I will wrap this up here, and I'll see you or hear you, or you'll hear me in the next podcast episode, which will be another question from another listener who submitted a Dear Adriana column. I'm probably going to be uploading these twice a week because I've got so many of them. So stay tuned for so many more episodes than what you're used to. When I said in my first I Am Back episode the other week, I was not kidding that I am back, and I am here to stay, and there will be so many new episodes coming through very, very shortly. I will also in the future be having some episodes with like interviews with other survivors of narcissistic abuse and all that kind of stuff. It's just right now I'm still healing from my dog having bitten me in the upper lip, so I still look kind of funky. So once I'm more comfortable with that, and the whole thing kind of heals a bit better, stay tuned for that type of episode and content. And I am just really looking forward to keeping this podcast alive, continuing it, sharing my nuggets of wisdom for whoever is here listening and wants to hear what I have to say about whatever they're going through. All right. See you next time. Bye.